Snow fell hard that night, thick flakes swirling like ghosts in the freezing wind. A small diner stood alone on the side of the icy highway, its neon sign flickering through the storm. Inside, the smell of coffee and bacon mixed with the faint hum of an old jukebox. Behind the counter stood Maria, a single mother working the night shift to keep her little diner alive and food on the table for her son. She'd seen her fair share of travelers, truckers, lost tourists, and the occasional biker passing through. But that night she was about to meet a group that would change her life forever. The door burst open, and 25 bikers stumbled in from the storm, shivering, their leather jackets stiff with ice. Maria's first instinct was fear. They were big, rough-looking men, their faces hidden behind frosted beards and tattoos. But then she saw their eyes exhausted, not angry. One of them, clearly the leader, spoke up in a low, respectful voice. "Ma'am, we don't mean any trouble. We've been riding for hours in this storm. The roads are blocked, and we just need a place to warm up." Maria looked around her nearly empty diner. It wasn't much, but it was warm. "Sit down," she said softly. "I'll make you something hot." The bikers took off their gloves, their hands shaking from the cold. They sat quietly, grateful. Maria poured steaming cups of coffee and started cooking pancakes, eggs, and whatever she had left in the kitchen. She didn't charge them a dime. "You don't have to do that," one biker said, his voice cracking. "You don't have to pay," she replied. Nobody should freeze out there. They were stunned. The world wasn't kind to men like them. They were used to being judged, feared, and turned away. Yet this small woman, who could barely afford her own bills, had opened her heart and her diner to them. As the night dragged on, the storm worsened. She offered them blankets, old ones she'd stored in the back, and let them sleep in the booths. Her son, Jack, peeked out from the kitchen, curious. Maria smiled and whispered, "They're just tired people, honey. Be kind." When morning came, the storm had finally passed. The bikers gathered their things and thanked her. Before leaving, their leader walked up to her, tears in his eyes. "You'll never know what this means to us." He said, "You didn't have to help, but you did. We won't forget this." She smiled humbly. "Just pay it forward," she said. The engines roared to life, and one by one, the bikers disappeared down the snowy highway. Maria thought that was the end of it, but she was wrong. The next morning, as she opened the diner, she heard a sound in the distance, a deep, rumbling thunder that grew louder and louder. Her son ran to the window and gasped. "Mom," he whispered, "there are hundreds of them." Maria stepped outside, her breath catching in her throat. The entire highway was lined with motorcycles, row after row of gleaming chrome, stretching as far as the eye could see. Bikers filled the road, engines idling, leather jackets bearing the unmistakable emblem, Hell's Angels, at least 1,500 of them. She froze. The leader from the night before rode up front, his bike shining in the morning light. He took off his helmet, smiled, and said, "Told you we wouldn't forget." Maria was speechless. He handed her an envelope, then nodded to his men. Within moments, dozens of bikers began unloading boxes, food supplies, new furniture, a brand, new coffee machine, and even toys for her son. One group worked to repaint the diner's exterior, another fixed the leaky roof. The leader placed the envelope in her hand. Inside was a check, enough money to cover her debts, buy new equipment, and keep her diner running for years. Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't understand," she whispered. The man smiled softly. "You showed us kindness when the world wouldn't. We take care of our own, and now you're one of us." The Hell's Angels spent the entire day working around the diner. They bought meals for every customer who came in, filled the parking lot with laughter and music, and made sure Maria's diner was busier than it had ever been. Word spread fast. Locals came out to see the unbelievable sight, hundreds of bikers helping a single mom rebuild her small town diner. The same people who once crossed the street to avoid men in leather jackets now stood in awe, realizing what brotherhood and gratitude truly looked like. When it was time for them to leave, the leader came up to Maria again. "You reminded us of something important," he said. "Kindness doesn't care what patch you wear. It's about heart." Maria hugged him tightly, her tears soaking his vest. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled, put his helmet back on, and raised his hand to the crowd. 100 engines roared to life at once, the sound echoing through the hills like thunder. Maria and her son stood at the diner door, watching as 1,500 bikers rode away into the horizon, a sea of black and chrome glistening under the morning sun. Her son looked up at her. "Mom," he said, "are they our friends now?" She smiled through her tears. "Yes, baby," she said softly, "they're family now." That winter night had started with fear and frost, but it ended with warmth, brotherhood, and the power of one woman's kindness. Maria didn't just shelter a few freezing bikers, she reminded the world that compassion can melt even the coldest hearts. Snow fell thick and heavy across the highway, the kind of storm that silences everything but the wind. Maria wiped down the counter of her small roadside diner, the flickering neon sign outside barely cutting through the white blur. She was a single mother, fighting to keep the lights on and a roof over her son Jack's head. Business had been slow for weeks, and that night, she didn't expect anyone to walk through the door. But life has a way of surprising you when your heart is open. The door suddenly swung open with a violent gust of icy wind. 25 men stumbled inside, their boots caked in snow, their leather jackets frozen stiff. They looked like giants, their beards frosted and faces hidden behind the cold. For a moment, Maria froze. Rough bikers in the middle of a storm were not the kind of guests she expected. Her first instinct was to protect Jack, who peeked out from the kitchen. But then she saw something in their faces: exhaustion, not aggression. The man at the front stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his jacket bearing the faded insignia of a motorcycle club. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep but gentle, "we're not here to cause trouble. We've been on the road for hours. The storm caught us off guard, and we've got nowhere else to go. We just need a place to warm up for the night." Maria looked at them for a long moment, her heart pounding. She had barely enough food left for the next few days, but she couldn't turn away people in need. She nodded toward the tables. "Sit down," she said softly. "You look half frozen." One by one the bikers took seats, their hands trembling from the cold. Maria poured steaming cups of coffee, then turned on the stove and began cooking whatever she had left: eggs, bacon, pancakes, and soup. The diner filled with warmth again, the smell of food overpowering the cold. "How much do we owe you?" one of them asked quietly as she served the plates. "You don't owe me anything," Maria said. "Just eat. You need it more than I do." The men exchanged looks, their tough faces softening. They weren't used to kindness, especially from strangers. They ate silently, their shoulders relaxing as the warmth seeped back into their bodies. Jack came out shyly from the back, holding a blanket. "You can use this," he said to one of the bikers. The man smiled, taking the blanket gently from his small hands. "Thank you, little man," he said. That night, Maria let them sleep inside. She gave them extra blankets, lit a fire in the corner stove, and made sure everyone was comfortable. Before turning in, the leader approached her again. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Most people wouldn't even open the door for us." Maria smiled faintly. "Everyone deserves a little warmth," she said. The next morning, the storm had cleared. The sky was crystal blue, the snow glistening like diamonds. The bikers cleaned up the diner before leaving, stacking chairs, mopping the floor, and making sure everything looked better than when they arrived. As they mounted their bikes, the leader handed Maria a small patch from his jacket. "You helped brothers who had nothing left," he said. "We won't forget that." She smiled politely, but didn't think much of it. To her, they were just cold men who needed help. But to them, she was something much greater, a light in the dark. The following morning, just as she was opening the diner, Maria heard a deep rumble in the distance. It wasn't thunder. It was louder, heavier, 1,000 engines roaring together. She stepped outside, shading her eyes from the morning sun. The sound grew, echoing across the valley, and then she saw them. A line of motorcycles, not 25, not 100, but hundreds upon hundreds stretched down the road as far as she could see. The air shook with the sound of roaring engines. Her heart raced as she realized what was happening. They were coming for her. Within minutes, the small diner was surrounded, rows upon rows of bikers, all wearing the same emblem, the Hells Angels, over 1,500 of them. Jack clung to her arm, wide-eyed. "Mom, are we in trouble?" he whispered. Maria took a step forward, unsure of what to expect. Then one familiar face appeared, the leader from 2 nights ago. He parked his bike in front, removed his helmet and smiled. "Told you we wouldn't forget," he said. Before she could speak, dozens of bikers dismounted and began unloading supplies from their trucks, boxes of food, tools, paint, lumber, and even new furniture. "What is all this?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. "Repayment," the leader said, "for your kindness. You helped brothers when you didn't have to. Now it's our turn." They worked tirelessly all day. Some repainted the diner's worn-out walls, others fixed the broken sign, and a few installed a new coffee machine. Another group built a new play area behind the diner for Jack. The parking lot turned into a sea of bikes, chrome glinting in the sunlight. Every time a customer arrived, a biker opened the door for them and paid for their meal. No one could believe their eyes. The most feared motorcycle club in America had shown up not to cause chaos, but to show gratitude. The leader handed Maria an envelope. Inside was a check, more money than she had ever seen. It was enough to pay her debts, fix her home, and secure her diner's future. Tears filled her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you reminded us what humanity looks like," he said. "You saw us as people, not outlaws, and that means more than you know." As the sun set, the roar of engines filled the air again. Maria stood on the porch with her son, waving as 1,500 bikers rode off into the distance, their headlights glowing like stars. Jack looked up at her. "Mom?" he asked softly. "Are they our friends now?" Maria smiled, pulling him close. "No, sweetheart," she said. "They're family now. That winter storm would go down in local legend not because of the snow, but because one woman's small act of kindness had touched the hearts of thousands." Maria didn't have much to give, but she gave what mattered most: compassion, and that single act lit up the coldest of nights, proving that even the hardest men have hearts that can be warmed by a mother's love.